You ever notice how some people can walk into your life and within weeks, you're questioning your own sanity? You start second-guessing decisions you were confident about. You feel guilty for boundaries you know are reasonable. You're exhausted from conversations that somehow always end with you apologizing, even when you're not sure what you did wrong. And the worst part, you can't quite put your finger on how it happened. Well, here's the uncomfortable truth. You've been manipulated. And it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to stop it. Look, nobody wants to believe they're being played. We like to think we're too smart, too aware, too self-assured to fall for manipulation tactics. But that's exactly what makes us vulnerable. Manipulators don't target weak people. They target good people. People with empathy, people who give second chances, people who believe in seeing the best in others. If that sounds like you, then congratulations. You're exactly the kind of person a manipulator dreams about. But here's the good news. Once you understand the psychological defense mechanisms that actually work, you become essentially untouchable. In this video, I'm breaking down 7 psychology-backed strategies that'll completely change how you handle manipulative people. These aren't feel-good platitudes or generic advice about setting boundaries. These are tactical, practical psychological defense techniques rooted in Stoic philosophy, behavioral psychology, and real-world power dynamics. We're talking about tools that work in your relationships, your workplace, your family, anywhere someone's trying to play games with your head. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll see manipulation coming from a mile away and know exactly how to neutralize it without losing yourself in the process. But here's the thing. These strategies only work if you stick around to get all 7. Each one builds on the last, creating a complete psychological defense system. Skip even one, and you're leaving yourself exposed. So do yourself a favor. Hit that like button right now to help this content reach more people who need it, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos like this. Because trust me, understanding human nature and power dynamics, that's the kind of knowledge that changes everything. Let's dive in. Here's what most people miss about manipulation tactics. It's not about the big, obvious moves. It's about the tiny shifts that happen so gradually, you don't even notice you're being played until you're already deep in the game. Think about it like this. A skilled manipulator doesn't knock down your front door. They find the one window you left unlocked, and they slip in while you're sleeping. By the time you wake up, they've already rearranged your furniture, and somehow you're thanking them for it. That's the nature of psychological warfare. It's subtle, it's patient, and it thrives on your lack of awareness. Now, Schopenhauer had this brilliant insight about human nature. He said people don't really want the truth. They want their version of reality confirmed. Manipulative people understand this instinctively. They know that if they can make you doubt your own perception, they can insert theirs instead. It's like they're hackers of human consciousness, looking for vulnerabilities in your mental operating system. And here's the kicker. The vulnerability they're looking for isn't weakness. It's actually your strength. Your empathy, your desire to see the best in people, your willingness to give second chances. These beautiful human qualities become their entry points. The first real defense against manipulation starts way before any confrontation or dramatic showdown. It starts with pattern recognition. You've got to become a student of behavior, not just words. Watch what people do when they think nobody's paying attention. Notice the small inconsistencies between what someone says and what they actually deliver. See, manipulators are like magicians. They want you focused on their right hand while the left hand is doing all the real work. Your job is to stop watching the show and start watching the technique. When someone's words sound too perfect, too rehearsed, too tailored to exactly what you want to hear, that's not connection, that's calculation. But here's where most advice on this topic falls short. They tell you to trust your gut, without teaching you how to distinguish between intuition and paranoia. Your gut isn't always right. Sometimes it's just reacting to old wounds or projecting past experiences onto new people. What you need is something more reliable, a baseline. You need to understand what normal, healthy interaction looks like so you can spot the deviations. When someone consistently makes you feel confused, guilty, or like you're walking on eggshells without any clear reason why. That's not you being sensitive. That's data. And once you start collecting that data, you begin to see something crucial about how power dynamics actually work in everyday relationships. The Stoics figured out something about emotional intelligence that modern psychology is just now catching up to. Your emotions aren't the problem, but your attachment to them is. When Marcus Aurelius was dealing with betrayal and political manipulation in Rome, he didn't try to eliminate his feelings. He learned to observe them from a distance, like watching clouds pass through the sky. That's the difference between suppressing emotions and practicing detachment. One makes you a pressure cooker ready to explode. The other makes you untouchable. And when you're dealing with someone who's trying to manipulate you, being untouchable isn't just a nice idea. It's survival. Think about how manipulation actually works on a mechanical level. A manipulator needs an emotional reaction from you to maintain control. They need your anger, your guilt, your fear, or your desperate need for their approval. These emotions are like fuel for their fire. Without your reaction, they've got nothing to work with. It's like watching someone try to play tennis against a wall that doesn't bounce the ball back. Eventually, they give up and go find someone else to play with. This isn't about becoming cold or indifferent to life. It's about choosing which emotional invitations you accept. Not every provocation deserves your energy. Here's a practical example. Let's say someone's using guilt to control you. They bring up past favors. They remind you of sacrifices they made. They paint themselves as the eternal victim of your alleged selfishness. The natural human response is to either defend yourself or collapse under the weight of that guilt. Both reactions feed the manipulation. But if you can step back and observe the tactic without getting hooked by it, if you can literally watch yourself feeling guilty without believing the story, something powerful happens. You create space. And in that space, you get to choose your response rather than react automatically. That's what Epictetus meant when he said some things are up to us and some things aren't. They're tactics, not up to you. Your response, completely up to you. The beautiful irony here is that emotional detachment actually makes you more compassionate, not less. When you're not drowning in your own reactions, you can see the manipulator for what they really are, usually someone deeply wounded, operating from a place of profound insecurity. You can have empathy for their pain without becoming a casualty of their dysfunction. You can acknowledge that hurt people, while also recognizing that understanding someone's trauma doesn't obligate you to absorb their toxicity. This is where real personal sovereignty begins. And it's exactly the kind of strategic thinking that changes how you navigate every relationship in your life. There's this fascinating concept in psychology called mirroring, and it's one of the most misunderstood tools in dealing with difficult people. Most folks think mirroring means copying someone's behavior. If they're aggressive, you get aggressive back. If they're manipulative, you manipulate right back. But that's not mirroring. That's just getting dragged into the mud and wrestling with a pig. And here's the thing about wrestling with pigs. You both get dirty, but the pig enjoys it. What you want to do instead is mirror their energy level while maintaining your own integrity. It's a subtle but crucial distinction that can completely change the power dynamics in any interaction. Let me break this down with a real-world scenario. You're in a conversation with someone who's using passive-aggressive comments to undermine you. They make a little jab disguised as a joke, or they give you a compliment that somehow feels like an insult. The amateur move is to either ignore it and let resentment build up, or to fire back with your own passive-aggressive comment. Both options keep you trapped in their game. The strategic move, match their intensity without adopting their method. If they're putting energy into trying to provoke you, you put equal energy into staying grounded and clear. If they're being indirect, you respond with direct, calm clarity that cuts through the fog they're creating. Nietzsche talked about this idea when he warned against staring too long into the abyss. When you fight monsters, you risk becoming one. But what if you didn't fight the monster at all? What if you simply reflected back to them exactly what they're giving you, without the emotional charge they're hoping to trigger? It's like becoming a mirror made of steel instead of glass. their tactics bounce off you, but they also get to see themselves clearly for the first time. This isn't about being passive or weak. It's about refusing to play on their field while still showing up to the game. You're not ignoring them. You're not escalating. You're just being unmovable. The real genius of this approach is that it exposes the manipulation without you having to call it out directly. When you consistently respond to chaos with calm, to aggression with composure, to guilt trips with gentle boundary setting, something interesting happens. The manipulator either has to escalate dramatically, which makes their tactics obvious to everyone around them, or they have to back off because you're not giving them the reaction they need. Either way, you win. And the best part, you haven't compromised yourself or lowered your standards. You've actually elevated the interaction by refusing to participate in its lowest version, which brings us to something even more powerful about how questions can become your greatest weapon. Socrates was probably the most dangerous person in ancient Athens, and he never raised his voice or threw a punch. His weapon of choice: questions. Simple, innocent-sounding questions that had a way of unraveling even the most carefully constructed lies. This wasn't just some philosophical party trick. It was a legitimate form of psychological defense that's just as effective today as it was 2,400 years ago. When you're dealing with someone who's trying to manipulate you, questions become your scalpel. They cut through the emotional manipulation and force the other person to confront the logic, or lack thereof, in their own arguments. And here's the beautiful part. You're not attacking them. You're just asking for clarity. Picture this scenario. Someone's trying to guilt you into doing something you don't want to do. Instead of defending your position or explaining your boundaries, you just ask, "Help me understand. What exactly would you do in my situation? Or what outcome are you hoping for here?" Suddenly, they have to articulate their actual expectations instead of hiding behind vague, emotional manipulation. Or they hit you with the classic, "If you really cared about me, you do this." Your response: "I'm curious. What does caring look like to you? Because I might have a different definition." See what's happening here? You're not taking the bait. You're making them explain the hook. The key to making this work is genuine curiosity, not sarcasm. If you ask these questions with an edge, you're just being confrontational and they can play the victim. But if you ask with real interest, as if you genuinely want to understand their thought process, they're stuck. They either have to admit their manipulation, which they won't do, or they have to engage with you on a logical level instead of an emotional one. This is how you take back control without seeming controlling. You're not refusing their requests. You're not arguing against their points. You're simply asking them to make sense, which is the one thing manipulation can't survive. Machiavelli understood that real power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's in asking the question that nobody else is asking. It's in being the person who politely insists on clarity when everyone else is accepting confusion as normal. When someone's trying to manipulate you with ambiguity, with mixed messages, with moving goalposts, your questions become like turning on the lights in a dark room. Suddenly, all their tactics are visible. And once something becomes visible, it loses most of its power. This works because manipulators rely on your assumption that challenging them would be rude or confrontational. They count on you staying quiet. So when you break that pattern, not with aggression, but with curiosity, you shift everything, setting up the next crucial move you need to master. Here's a truth that nobody wants to hear. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away. Not in anger, not with a dramatic exit speech, not with a long explanation about why you're leaving, just a calm, strategic withdrawal from the situation. This goes against everything we're taught about confrontation and closure. We've been conditioned to believe that every relationship deserves a conversation, that we owe people explanations, that walking away without resolution is somehow cowardly. But when you're dealing with manipulation, those beliefs are exactly what keep you trapped. Manipulative people don't want your explanations. They want your engagement. And every minute you spend explaining yourself is another minute they get to argue, guilt trip, or twist your words. Think of it like this. You're in a burning building, and someone keeps asking you to explain your evacuation plan before you leave. Would you stop to have that conversation, or would you just get out? Strategic distance works the same way. You don't need permission to protect yourself. You don't need to make the other person understand or agree with your decision. You just need to create space between you and the source of toxicity. This might mean limiting contact, setting up boundaries around when and how you communicate, or in extreme cases, cutting ties completely. The strategic part means you're doing this consciously and deliberately, not out of emotional reactivity, but out of clear-headed self-preservation. The Stoics had this concept of premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Basically, they'd mentally rehearse worst-case scenarios so they wouldn't be caught off guard. You can apply this same principle to creating distance. Think through what the manipulator's reaction will be when you pull back. They'll probably try to escalate. They might use guilt, anger, or suddenly become incredibly nice to pull you back in. If you've already anticipated these moves, they lose their effectiveness. You're not surprised, you're not swayed, and you're not pulled back into the game. You've already decided that your peace matters more than their approval, and that decision is ironclad. What makes this approach so effective is that it's not about punishing the other person or proving a point. It's simply about protecting your energy and your sanity. When you create distance without drama, you're not giving them new ammunition to use against you. There's no angry outburst they can point to as evidence that you're the problem. There's no detailed explanation they can pick apart and use to drag you back into an argument. You're just quietly, calmly, consistently unavailable for their manipulation. And here's what's fascinating. Sometimes that distance is what finally allows you to see the relationship clearly, which leads us to something even more concrete you need to be doing. This is going to sound paranoid until you actually need it, and then it's going to feel like the smartest thing you ever did. When you're dealing with someone who manipulates through distorting reality, your memory becomes your greatest vulnerability, and your documentation becomes your greatest asset. Manipulators are masters of rewriting history. They'll deny things they said last week. They'll claim conversations never happened. They'll insist you agreed to things you never agreed to. This isn't just annoying. It's a specific tactic called gaslighting, and it's designed to make you doubt your own perception of reality. The antidote: keep records. Not in a creepy stalker way, but in a I'm protecting my sanity way. Start simple. After important conversations, write down what was said, what was agreed upon, and what you observed. Send follow-up emails or texts that summarize key points. Just to confirm our conversation today, we agreed that you'd handle X by Friday, and I'd take care of Y by Monday. Sound right? You're not being confrontational. You're just documenting reality in real time. This serves two purposes. First, it gives you a reference point when the manipulator tries to change the story later. Second, it signals to them that you're not someone whose memory can be easily manipulated. Most manipulators will back off when they realize their tactics are being documented, because documentation removes their primary weapon, ambiguity. George Orwell understood the power of controlling information and rewriting history better than almost anyone. In 1984, he showed how whoever controls the record controls the truth. When you document your interactions with a manipulative person, you're refusing to let them control your version of reality. You're creating what I call reality anchors, fixed points of truth that you can return to when someone's trying to make you feel crazy. Think about how powerful this is. They tell you they never said something, and you can pull up the exact text message where they said it. They claim you never told them about a problem, and you have the email. This isn't about being petty or playing gotcha. It's about maintaining your grip on objective truth when someone's actively trying to loosen it. Now, here's the deeper psychological benefit of documentation that nobody talks about. When you keep records, you start to see patterns you might have missed otherwise. You realize that what felt like isolated incidents are actually part of a consistent strategy. You notice that their apologies never lead to change behavior. You see that they cycle through the same manipulative tactics every few weeks like clockwork. This pattern recognition is invaluable because it helps you stop giving endless second chances to someone who's showing you exactly who they are. Documentation turns your gut feeling into concrete evidence, and that evidence becomes the foundation for the most important defense you'll ever build. Everything we've talked about so far, recognition, detachment, mirroring, questioning, distancing, documenting, all of it points toward one fundamental truth. The strongest defense against manipulation isn't any external tactic. It's the internal authority you build within yourself. This is what philosophers and psychologists have been trying to tell us for centuries. When you have a solid sense of who you are, what you value, and what you will and won't tolerate, manipulation struggles to find a foothold. It's like trying to manipulate a mountain. It just doesn't move. But when your sense of self is shaky, when you're constantly seeking external validation, when you don't trust your own judgment, you become the perfect target. Building inner authority starts with self-awareness. And I mean real self-awareness, not the Instagram quote version. You need to know your triggers, your weaknesses, your patterns. What makes you feel guilty even when you shouldn't? What situations make you doubt yourself? Where do you compromise your values to avoid conflict? These aren't character flaws. They're just areas where you haven't yet developed strong boundaries. Think of them like gaps in a fence. A manipulator will find every single gap and exploit it. Your job is to notice those gaps before they do and start reinforcing them. This isn't comfortable work. It requires looking at parts of yourself you might prefer to ignore. Jung had this concept of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we don't want to acknowledge. He said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you'll call it fate. When you're dealing with manipulation, your shadow is often what's being exploited. Maybe you have an unconscious belief that saying no makes you a bad person. Maybe you learned as a child that keeping the peace is more important than speaking your truth. Maybe you're terrified of being alone, so you tolerate behavior you know is harmful. These unconscious patterns are running in the background of your mind like malware, and manipulators can sense them. When you do the work of bringing these patterns into consciousness, you remove their power. The beautiful thing about developing inner authority is that it radiates outward. You don't have to announce it or prove it to anyone. People just sense it. When you're solid in yourself, when you've done the work of knowing who you are and what you stand for, manipulation attempts feel laughable rather than threatening. It's not that you become invulnerable to difficult people. It's that their tactics don't land with the same impact. You're no longer seeking their approval or fearing their disapproval, which means they've lost their leverage. This is the ultimate form of personal power, not power over others, but power over your own emotional state, your own choices, your own life. And once you've tasted that kind of freedom, you'll never willingly give it up again. So here we are, 7 psychology tricks that can fundamentally change how you navigate manipulation. But let me be brutally honest with you. Knowing these strategies and actually implementing them are 2 completely different things. Right now, you've got the knowledge. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Because here's what I've learned after years of studying human behavior and power dynamics. Information without application is just entertainment. And if you're still dealing with the same manipulative people 6 months from now, using the same old responses that haven't worked, you can't blame the tactics. You got to look in the mirror. Think about the manipulative person in your life right now. You know exactly who I'm talking about. That person who's been draining your energy, distorting your reality, making you feel small. Now ask yourself, what's one thing from this video you can apply the next time they try their usual tricks? Maybe it's asking that simple Socratic question that exposes their logic. Maybe it's creating strategic distance without the dramatic explanation they're expecting. Maybe it's just documenting the conversation so you have a reality anchor when they try to rewrite history later. Pick one, master it, then come back and layer in the next one. That's how you build unshakable psychological defense, one conscious choice at a time. Here's the deeper truth that nobody wants to hear. The manipulative people in your life aren't going to change because you watch this video. They're going to keep doing what works for them until it stops working. And it only stops working when you change, when you stop reacting predictably, when you stop accepting confusion as normal, when you build that inner authority that makes you unmovable. This isn't about fixing them or proving them wrong or getting revenge. This is about reclaiming your peace, your clarity, and your power. And that work, that's completely within your control. Now, if this video gave you even one insight that clicked, one strategy that felt like it could change your situation, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because here at Timeless Advice, we're building a community of people who refuse to play small, who understand that ancient wisdom combined with modern psychology gives you an unfair advantage in life. We dive deep into the uncomfortable truths about human nature, power dynamics, and personal sovereignty, the kind of content that actually transforms how you show up in the world. More videos like this are coming, and trust me, you don't want to miss them. And here's my question for you, and I want you to really sit with this. What would your life look like 6 months from now if you actually became immune to manipulation? If nobody could guilt trip you, gaslight you, or make you doubt your own reality? If you could navigate difficult people with the calm confidence of someone who sees the game clearly and refuses to play? That version of you exists. The only question is whether you're willing to do the work to become that person. So leave a comment below. Tell me which of these 7 strategies resonated most with you, or share your own experience dealing with manipulative people. Let's build this conversation together. And remember, the strongest defense isn't what you do to others. It's who you become for yourself. Now go handle your business.